it's Robin here. Welcome to the Espresso Talk Today show. It's always great when our community of amiable intellectuals get together for another uncommon conversation. And I can tell you today's show is definitely uncommon and special and unique and a lot of other adjectives that are all going to add up to exciting. So, I'm glad that you're here to share the excitement with me. What am I excited about? So glad that you asked. I'm excited that we have a Master Storyteller on the show today. Mitch Capel, also known as Gran'daddy Junebug, will join the Espresso Talk Today team for an espresso and an amazing discussion about storytelling. And yes, to tell us a few stories too. Before we get started, let me properly introduce our special guest. Mitchell Capel, yes, also known as Gran'daddy Junebug, often says, good storytelling is like poetry to your ears. And good poetry is storytelling at its best. And Mitch Capel is great at both. By the way, he also says that golf is a lot like storytelling, but that's another story, and pun intended, I couldn't resist. I don't know exactly where to begin or how much to tell, but besides being a storyteller, Mitch is also a recording artist, poet, actor, and author. He has graced the stage and screen with other luminaries such as Ruby Dee, Mary Baraka, Nikki Giovanni, and Sonia Sanchez. He has appeared in documentaries, performed in theater productions, and is considered the national expert on the works of the great poet Paul Laurence Dunbar. You're going to hear a lot about Paul Laurence Dunbar on this show, and I promise that you're going to leave with a new appreciation of this great poet. Even if you already loved him, you're going to love him even more. Mitch Capel was born in the small town of Southern Pines, North Carolina. His parents and grandparents strongly encouraged Mitch and his brother to learn and recite poetry. His grandmother was very interested in the works of Paul Laurence Dunbar, and that's where he got the passion for Dunbar as well. I won't say anything more about this part of his life since Mitch is going to tell you the real story, and of course, you want to hear the story from the actual storyteller. I'll just conclude by telling you that Mitch travels throughout the country performing, and he performs abroad to sold-out and spellbound audiences. Mitch even performed at the 2008 inauguration of President Barack Obama. We are so lucky that he is so generously agreeing to participate on the Espresso Talk Today show. And I'm sure that you're ready to hear Mitch Capel now. You're ready to hear Gran'daddy Junebug, and you're ready to hear the storytelling, I'm sure. My grandmother, who we all lovingly called Big Mama, used to say, ain't nothing left but the telling. I have been really curious as to what inspired you to become a storyteller and what your journey has been, to Master Storyteller.
Well, what inspired me was my grandmother. Actually, both sets of grandparents and my father and mother, especially, were great storytellers. But what really got me on the journey was far back as I can remember, at the age of 3, 4, 5 years old, visiting my father's mother every other weekend. My dad was a pretty successful salesman selling cookware door to door, and so he would go to conventions and go to stuff every weekend, seemed like. So we would stay with different grandparents. But when I stayed with my father's mother, Elnora Lee Capel, she always would pull out this old, worn out edition of the life and works of Paul Laurence Dunbar. Mm-hmm. And when I say old and worn out, this book was, I guess, it had been passed down from generation to generation from the late 1800s through my family. And pages missing, no cover. But she would pull that book out and she would start reading to my brother and I a cabin tale about a weasel and a bear. And the way she read it, the fact that she could read, first of all, was amazing for that generation. and just the way that she read it, and she was tickled to death. And I didn't even know what a bear was. The largest animal I knew was a German Shepherd, so my visual was a German Shepherd. But when I got away from it, grew up, started playing sports in high school, went on to college, and returned from college and started actually working with my father in his business. And he would tell me stories from the creek, from Windbelow, a little town he was from. And he would start telling me stories, and he knew how much I loved hearing him tell those stories. And one day he said, man, if you love those creek stories, that's what he called them. He said, you'll love this. And he handed me that book that my grandmother had used to read to us. And when I got it, I'm going through this book. And first of all, I looked at it, I'm going, this is the most loved book I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you could just feel the energy from it, from my ancestors. And when I found that story, I started reading it, and I realized this was the story my grandmother told me when I was 3, that she read to us. And so I started reading it to my kids, and they want to hear it every night. So by repetition, I memorized it. And I was with a friend one day selling cars, and moved from cookware to cars because I needed a car, and I figured the best way to buy a car was to sell them. And so it was raining one day, and I was sitting in a car with a friend of mine, and we were talking, and I said, check this out. And I went into the story, and he was laughing. He said, man, he said, I'm head of the entertainment committee for this banquet coming up Friday. I don't have anybody. Can you come and tell that story? And I was like, what, me, really? Like, yeah. So I did. There were teachers in the audience. They wanted me to come to the school, and it just snowballed from there. Wow. So my main thing was to start memorizing all of Dunbar's work. And so I just started picking out stories I thought would be great for kids, and just created the character Gran'daddy Junebug because I thought an older person should be telling them stories. And my goal was to memorize all of his work. And I guess I have about 70% memorized of Dunbar's work. And then I started finding other writers and other people from his, because I found Granger's Index of First Lines, and then I found dialect, and I started looking at all these dialect first lines, and then I started finding other writers like Henry Franklin Bryant, James David Carruthers, started finding all these other writers and started using their work, and then I started writing some of my own stuff. And so that's how it began. And then I said, I went into a school. Actually, I take that back. I saw a storyteller was coming to the library where I lived, Madafo, Lloyd Wilson. And I said, I'm gonna go see this guy. So I went to see him and listen to him tell stories. And when he was finished, I said, hey man, I'm thinking about taking on this journey as a storyteller. And he said, okay, this is what you need to do. And he pulled out all this stuff. He showed me his brochures. He said I needed to get some ink. I needed to do something somewhere so the newspaper would cover it, and just start doing it that way. So I did. Another guy asked me to come to his daycare center, and I went there, and the newspaper covered it. It ended up being on the front page of the paper, and that was it. So I started from there. And, it's been a great journey. 37 years of storytelling now.
37 years. But when you went to college, you hadn't planned to actually become a storyteller then. So what did you study in college?
So I did. I studied theater, speech and theater, and I hadn't planned on being a storyteller. You're right. First college I went to was A&T. I wanted to be an architect. And I was sitting in class as a freshman, and the dean walked in and he said, look around. There's only maybe 2 of you going to graduate out of this thing. And I thought, wow, I didn't like my odds. So I left, and I went to speech and theater, and immediately went into a play, and just fell in love with the theater. And so that was my first love, actually. But I did not like ensembles because there was so much drama, and not to be, no pun intended, but it was so many people had issues, they didn't know their lines, or they wouldn't show up to rehearsal, or, and they would make me look bad. So I was like, okay. So I became a one-man show because I know I'm gonna be on time. I'm gonna know my material, and we're gonna have a good time. So.
Wow. I mean, Marlene, as an actor and a producer, that must really strike you, because I think you did a lot of ensemble work, right?
Yeah, I definitely do a lot of ensemble work, but I completely understand what you mean when you say people make you look bad, because it's one thing to do an ensemble, show for a company, like or like for a school production where things are required and you know where those people are gonna be, and
Right.
and to really be all in for those things. But when there's no stakes and it's a theater company and you really want to put on a show, you invited everybody, and you have that one or two people who just
Yeah.
don't have the same priorities as you, it really can just mess the whole thing up. So I'm all with it. I love ensemble, but I understand what your trepidation is.
Yes.
My question though, after because you've done this for a while, what would you say, with your training included, are the qualities of a good storyteller?
Well, first of all, I think the best qualities of a good storyteller is someone who is engaging, first of all, and someone who knows their material, second of all. And most important, someone who is going to shift your paradigm, someone who's going to move you to a point where you came in there thinking one way and you walk out a better person.
Mhm.
That's what I think a good storyteller, great storyteller does. And if you can do that, if you can move people to become a better person, I think you're successful. Or if you can move somebody into, uh, for example, I've done schools all over the country, and sometimes I'm in a school district, and I'll come back to that area later in life. And one time, this kid came up to me. He was in middle school, and he came up to me after my show, and he said, "I just want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" He said, "I saw you when I was in elementary school, and I was really going down the wrong path. I was disrespecting my teachers. I was disrespecting my elders." He said, "I was leaning towards getting into a gang and just going the wrong path. And your show really put me on the right track. And I'm an A student now, and I'm doing this, that, and the other." And I'm like, wow, man, I started crying because I changed someone's life for the better. And I
Mhm.
hugged him and thanked him for the information. And I've always said, if one person, if I take one person's life and turn it into something, that's my reward as a storyteller. I don't do it for the money, even though the money is very good. I don't do it to boost my ego up. I don't do it for any of that stuff. I do it because, first of all, it's my passion, it's what I love. But most of all, I do it because I want to change lives.
And what do you think sets you apart from other storytellers? Like, why would people come see your show versus anyone else's?
Because I am a storyteller. 90% of the stories I tell are in rhyme. So I'm different than anybody else. If people are putting on a storytelling festival, it's like making gumbo. You got to have, your shrimp, you got to have your okra, you got to have this, you got to have that. You have different parts. Now, there are a lot of storytellers who tell Anansi stories. There are a lot of storytellers that tell Jack tales. There are a lot of storytellers who tell the same stories. Uh, I don't. I mean, I do. I tell some of some of the storytellers that I've come across over the years. I've heard them tell stories that I fell in love with, and I would retell their stories, but in my version of it, but always giving them credit. But at the same time, my stories are mostly in rhyme, and there are only a few people who have to do storytelling in rhyme. There's two that I can name off my top of my head: Waddy Mitchell in Texas, and what's her name? She's gonna kill me if I can't call her name, but she's the other one. And I'm the only other one that does it in rhyme. So when people are putting festivals together, they want to have a variety of different types of storytellers, and so I'm picked a lot because my stuff is different.
Different,
Hmm. And I
And
do different shows. I have kids shows. I have stuff, historical work. I try to have material for any group. I always tease and say if the Ku Klux Klan wanted to bring me in, I would have something for them,
yeah.
So, and then that's another thing. You have to know your audience. I used to write down what I was going to do prior to being there, write down a list of stories I was going to tell, and I get there, and none of these stories would work. So when I get there, I always get there early, at least an hour earlier, hour and a half early, and I'm watching, and I'm standing out in the lobby or wherever I'm performing, and I watch the people coming in, and I listen to the people come in, and I listen to what they're talking about, and 9 times out of 10, they will tell me what they need to hear. And then I'll go backstage and I'll pull out my list of stories, and I'll pull from those stories, those titles, the stories that I know is going to move this audience, and they're going to appreciate it. And then I try to put them in an order that they flow. so that the whole show flows, so that you make them laugh, make them cry, make them laugh kind of thing.
But then from there, I do actually have another question, because you mentioned that the style you use in terms of, adding rhymes to your story makes a big difference. How important would you say technique is in general for storytelling, or for poetry in that sense?
Technique is huge, because, my thing is this, if a story moves me, it's going to move you. I don't just get up there to tell stories just to be entertaining. I have to move you. Like I said, I have to shift the paradigm. So if it moves me, if it makes me go, wow, if it makes me think, if it makes me laugh, if it makes me cry, it's going to make you think, it's going to make you laugh, it's going to make you cry. So when I learn a story, especially if I'm learning like Paul Laurence Dunbar's work or any other writer's work, if I'm memorizing it, because with rhyme, there's no ad-libbing. I have to stay on script because the next line has to rhyme with the next line. So it's a layering process for me. And every time, once I memorize it and get it down, I run it back and forth and back and forth. And like I said, it's a layering process. So every time I tell it to myself, driving down the highway or wherever I am, I don't look in a mirror. I just do it. Laying in the bed at 4 a.m, I run it through my head. It's a layering process. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper, the meaning of the story for me. So when I get on stage and tell the story, now the audience is going to feel, they're going to understand the meaning of the story. They're going to understand. And Dunbar was so deep that sometimes I would say, why is he using this word? This ain't the right word to be using here. But I realized later, after I've layered it, man, he picked the right word for this,
Well, that process actually sounds very structured and very intentional. Did someone teach you that, or actually did you have like an intellectual guide, so to speak, who showed you this kind of process, or who helped you kind of refine your ways of telling stories? Like you mentioned your grandmother and all of them, but
yeah, it was on the job. I learned it as I went. I learned it as I watched other storytellers that moved me and saw the passion and saw how they left everything out on that stage. So yeah, it was just that, and then you get the feedback from the audience once you're on stage. If they're engaging with you or not. If you got an amen corner over there, that you feel that you're feeding off of, and just the good vibes of it. But no, it's not. It's just something self-taught to me, because like I said, I have to memorize it. I have to get it in my computer up here, and then I have to run it over and over and over again to make sure it's programmed in there. And I used to joke that I had a photographic memory, but now it seems like I'm running out of film.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I heard that you memorized 70% of Paul Laurence Dunbar's poems or his writings.
Yes, I memorized. Did I lose y'all? Yeah, I memorized 70% of it, and there we go. Yeah, as well as other writers, Henry Franklin Bryant, like I said, James David Carruthers, my man from Chicago. Good Lord. What's his name? I'm having a senior moment right now. Who is this? I've got all the CDs. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But there's, different styles, different people. Hakeem Mahadabuti, I've memorized some of his work. Yeah, so just, and like I said, writing my own stuff, and it's just to have enough material, just to have stuff. Anytime you get ready to do a show, you want to be prepared. And, I've got a group of environmentalists getting ready to come to my park and camp out, and they want some storytelling. So I have stories about trees and
okay,
about the environment.
Relevant.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's interesting that you have always kind of have something in mind. Like in 10th grade, we had an English teacher who always said to like memorize certain quotes from the things you read. Because, you never know when you can use it as like a party trick, or to actually keep these things as profound nuggets, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I do actually have a question about Paul Laurence Dunbar, because personally, I haven't actually read any of his work, but as looking through his biography and things like that, one particular work did come out from him, and it was Majors and Minors. So could you explain a little bit of that to us, or like what it meant to you, or just some key points that you think people who haven't read anything by him should know?
Well, that was the second book he published. The first book he published was Oak and Ivy.
Okay.
The second book he published was Majors and Minors, and he called it Majors and Minors because the poems that were in standard English were supposed to be the majors, and then the dialect pieces were the minors. So that's why he named it that. But Dunbar was such a prolific writer of his time, and he was a genius, literary genius, and people, he gets a bad rap because of the dialect. And the problem was at that time, that's all the publishers were buying. That's all the people were buying at the time. But even in his dialect, he stood for social justice, and he stood up for the Black community, even in his dialect.
And I gotta ask, which dialect we talking? We're talking Southern dialect, Southern Black dialect.
We're talking. Yeah, well, his mother was from Kentucky,
All right.
and she was born on a plantation in Kentucky. And she was allowed to listen to her so-called master as he read poetry to her at night. As he read poetry to his wife, she was allowed to sit and listen. So she fell in love with the poetry. And when after Emancipation Procrastination was signed, she went to Dayton, Ohio, and set up house. And she was so determined to learn and read and write, she would bake cookies and cakes and pies and trade slices of pies and cakes with children coming home from school for the ABCs they had learned. And she took the ABCs and taught herself to read and write. And so when Paul was born, she wanted him to get the best education possible. So she instilled in him the joy, first of all, that she had for poetry and for education, and taught him how to read and write, and made sure he went to Dunbar High School. He was the only African American at Dunbar High School. In 1890, he graduated with the Wright. Well, the Wright brothers didn't graduate, but he was classmates with the Wright brothers. And he wrote the school song. He was head of the Philomathian Society. He was just a literary genius at such a. He wrote his first poem at 6 years old, and his mother kept all his poems that he wrote. So finally, when he was ready to publish, he went to her and said, "Mama, where's all that?" And she went and got all the poems that he had written over the years. And that's when he started putting together his first book. He was on an elevator. He couldn't find a job, so he was an elevator operator in the Callahan building, and was selling his books. He spoke to the Western Writers Association, and then he went back to the elevator and was working the elevator. People were looking for him, going, "Who was that guy that just spoke?" So Dunbar was brilliant. I mean, Frederick Douglass called him the most promising young colored man in America. William McKinley had him in his parade. The Wright brothers gave him a bicycle that's in his house up there in Dayton, Ohio. So he wrote volumes of poetry, and not only poetry, but he wrote musicals, songs. He was friends with Rosamond Johnson and James Weldon Johnson, that wrote the Lift Every Voice and Sing. He traveled with the Fisk Jubilee Singers. I mean, this brother was bad, and he died at 34.
Oh man,
a young man from 1872 to 1906.
I mean, one of actually somebody about 2 years ago gave me a book that belonged to her mother, she's a white woman. She's a teacher in an inner city. She only taught Black students. She really wanted to learn poetry, and she wanted to teach them about Black poetry. So she gave me, I'll just show you this fantastic book, and called Poetry of Black America, Anthology of 20th Century. And that's where I was first introduced to Paul Laurence Dunbar with this poem, We Wear the Mask.
Yes.
And that one to me, wow, I said, really captured. Yeah, I think what Black people feel and how we, how we walk through life every day.
Yeah. We wear the mask that grins and lies, hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears inside? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. we smile. But oh, great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, lift every voice and sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask.
I hope you're charging big money for your shows.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite poems of his. In fact, Maya Angelou, I did a program with her years ago, and she did that, and that's how she did We Wear the Mask. So I've been like she's putting on a mask the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was also one about the caged bird sings too. That was one I was.
Yeah, and that's where Maya got her first line. It's called Sympathy. The poem is entitled Sympathy, and that's where. And so what happened to Maya? You know, she was abused as a child, and for 7 years she did not speak, did not utter a word. So what happened was, though, during those 7 years, she took Paul Laurence Dunbar's book and read his book and studied his book the same way I did. I wasn't abused, but I read the book I kept that book with me for 7 years. Just read it. And anybody that would listen, she kept that book for 7 years and studied that book for 7 years. And when she finally spoke, and came out of everything, and when she finally wrote her biology, when she wrote, what is it?
Biography.
Thank you. When she wrote autobiography. When she finally wrote her autobiography, she took the title. She took that line from Dunbar. I know why the caged bird sings, and that's from the Sympathy. That's from the poem Sympathy.
Okay, I was wondering. So that
She studied Dunbar.
Yeah.
That's another favorite poem. That's a tough one too, man. Yeah.
So we're talking about all these really great pieces, but another question that I have is, what stories won't you tell, or like what kinds of stories won't you tell, and why?
Well, I won't tell stories like, okay, let me back up. Some of Dunbar's stories, some of his poems, like I said, are written in dialect. And some of the terminology he used back then, like pickaninny, darky, whatever, even though the story is a great story, I won't use those terms. I'll change it to beautiful brown baby or whatever. I just won't use the terms. And I'm sure he wouldn't use them now if he, were living, or he wouldn't have used them then if he didn't have to. But again, that's all that was selling. I won't tell stories that degrade us as a race. I won't tell any stories that degrade a woman. I won't tell any stories that are buffoonery, that make it look like someone's doing a minstrel show. I know a storyteller that does that, and it just turns my stomach to watch it work. But it's again, all my stories have to be positive. They have to move me. There's a big thing going around right now about Joel Chandler Harris' stories, Brer Rabbit and all of that. And I don't like the fact that he had stole those stories from an African American and, changed them up a little bit. So I won't tell those stories. There are people who do, and God bless them, but I won't tell those stories. I've got enough right now on my plate to tell, and all of them are positive. All of them, a lot of historical stories. Dunbar's father was in the 55th Massachusetts Regiment, and so he told him stories of the Civil War, and Dunbar wrote them down in poetic verse. I mean, when they listed colored soldiers, decolored soldiers, Whistling Sam. And they're from a first person, this was actually, that somebody was actually there in that war, just the words and just the way that he describes everything. And it's just so powerful to hear it from a first person and not hearsay of someone else and then a lot of facts and all that stuff. Now, this is a story that somebody told him firsthand that he wrote down. And that's why I love Dunbar, because all this stuff is firsthand knowledge. It's not washed down or anything like that.
His wife was also a poet or a storyteller too, wasn't she? What's her name? Alice?
Alice
Alice
Ruth.
Dunbar
Oh,
Nelson.
Alice Ruth Moore. Yeah, Alice Ruth Moore Dunbar. Yeah, she was a poet. She was from New Orleans, and they met uh, she started writing to him, and they didn't have text back then, so she was writing to him and sent a picture, and they fell in love, and they got married against his mother. His mother didn't care for it. His mother thought she was gold digging, just wanted to use his name to make herself famous. It was not a good marriage, as I understand it. And she didn't attend his funeral. But anyway, yeah, I have her works as well. I've collected her works. I have all of Dunbar's first edition books except for Majors and Minors. That's the only one that has eluded me over the years. I have Oak and Ivy. I have all the others, several copies of some of them. A lot of good stuff of his. Yeah. But yeah, she's great. She did an anthology of poems, and there was actually a poem in there that I fell in love with. It's called The Funeral, F-U-N-A-L, The Funeral of Bruce Smith or the Nights of the Rising Star. It's a funny poem, if you can find it. I mean, and then the problem was I memorized that poem, and then I actually found, because she had found it somewhere and redid it for our anthology, but then I found the original version, and it was different. It was more to it, so I had to relearn it. And yeah, I've got it on a VHS tape somewhere. One night I tried to pull it out, and I was going through it, and I got stuck at a certain part, and I couldn't remember what it was. Because thing about me, a lot of my stories I don't tell but once every 10 years. Sometimes like Christmas stories, I don't tell those every Christmas. I'm not invited to tell them, so I don't tell them. It might be 3 or 4 years before I'm invited to do something with the symphony or something where I'm telling those Christmas stories. It's not every year I do The Colored Soldiers. It's not every year that I do certain stories. So I have to brush them off every now and then. And,
so you spoke at the inauguration of Barack Obama. So what did you prepare for that, and how did you?
Yeah, I'm very curious about this also.
Well, I was planning on going, of course, because it was a historical, monumental occasion. And I'm making plans and trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. And I get a phone call. This guy says, "Hello, my name is James Alexander Robinson. I'm with the Smithsonian. We'd love for you to perform for the presidential inauguration of Barack Obama." I said, "Come on, man. Don't be playing with a brother like that." He said, "No, I'm serious." He said, "No, I'm serious, man." I started to hang up on him. He said, "I met you at the Black Storytelling Festival." And I said, "Oh, yeah, right." So it was cool. They brought me in, and Onawumi Jean Moss from Amherst, Massachusetts. She and I performed in the Smithsonian Castle leading up to the festival. Every day we were in there doing like 2 shows a day. Wow. And it was just amazing. So the stories I told were historical stories. My father's favorite, Going Back by Dunbar, told that one, and a few others. And then the one that I wrote the night that President Obama was elected, that's the one I always finished with every day. And so it was fun.
Wow.
Yeah, so my name is up there, not to brag, but my name is on there with Aretha Franklin. I mean, everybody else that performed. I was like, well.
But like, I gotta ask, how was your family's reaction when you told them that, hey, I've been invited to speak at the inauguration of Barack Obama?
They were great. They were thrilled, excited. It was the coldest day I'd ever experienced in my life, the inauguration itself. But it was great. I mean, everybody it was amazing. There was hundreds of thousands of people there, and everybody was just as nice as they could be. "Excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Would you like to sit?" I mean, it was amazing. Man, I lived in D.C. for a while, and I've never seen anything like it. I mean, this lady literally left her pocketbook on the ground and came back 45 minutes later, and her pocketbook was still sitting there. Oh, I mean, that kind of situation. Yes. I mean, it was like nobody bothered anybody. Everybody was just as nice as they could be. It was a lot of fun. And we were freezing out there. It was cold. So, but it was fun. It was worth it. It was worth it to witness.
Oh, boy.
Man, that's great. And also, yeah, I think with Biden's inauguration too, there was another great poet. I forgot her name, but she was really good. She was incredible.
She was amazing.
Amanda Gorman?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Oh, yeah.
And people, a lot of, at least people my age and everything, we were talking about her for a long time. Like people that aren't even that into poetry were just completely moved by what she did. And I think, yeah, it's just special when you have all these people doing that.
Yeah, it was special.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing, amazing poet.
Yeah.
But what would you say, like, okay, so personally, like, I haven't been doing as much poetry now. Just I've at school and things like that. But what would you say to someone who's into storytelling or writing poems or even writing, yeah, doing creative writing? What advice would you have for them to either progress in general or to refine their skills in particular?
I'd say refine their skills in particular, and to be truthful and honest to yourself, and you know, don't listen to naysayers. Just be, you know, be yourself, and follow your heart when you write. You know, a lot of times, you know, when the muse hits you, you have to get up and do it. I mean, I could be riding my tractor cutting grass, and if something hits me, I got to stop right then and start writing now.
That's right.
You know, 3 o'clock in the morning, if I wake up and it's there. If I say, oh, well, I'm gonna wait till I wake up later on and do it, it's gone. It's gone. It's not there.
Can't force it. Can't force it either.
Yeah, if you got to force it, you can't do it. So you got to take it when it's there, man, and run with it. And yeah, so I encourage you to, whatever you feel, whatever direction you want to go with it, and trust it.
Cool. Yeah.
You know, I think people always love stories. They love to hear a story, how it's told in different ways. It could be in a movie, or it could be in a poem or a sonnet or something. But it does seem as though storytelling, the art of storytelling, of a person standing up and telling a story and acting it out and really performing it, like that art is really, I think, making a resurgence now. I mean, not just in the Black community, but I think I'm just seeing it around more everywhere now. Do you agree with that, or?
Absolutely, yeah, I do agree with it. You know, there's the National Association of Black Storytellers, which is huge, as well as storytelling down in Jonesboro, Tennessee. They've been at it a lot longer, but I think we just had our 37th year annual festival. And in fact, there's a webinar tonight or something going on with the storytelling. But yeah, it's just, you know, what it is. You make that connection with the audience as a storyteller. And, you know, I used to use props, and I still use props for the kids and stuff, but not a lot. But that's why storytelling is so powerful, because you get to use your imagination. That's why the book is always better than the movie. Because when you see the movie, you see Steven Spielberg's version of what he thinks that should be, what the picture should be. When you read the book, your imagination, you use the references that you had. Just like when my grandmother was reading the cabin tale about the weasel and the bear, my reference was a German Shepherd. That's all I knew. So that's why storytelling is powerful, because people get to go into their own mind's eye and create the characters that someone's talking about.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm just seeing a lot about with the Gen Zers that they don't seem to have they don't use their, and not allowed to use, I'll put it this way, not allowed to use their imagination as much as we were, because we didn't have, you know, we had Scooby-Doo, we had TV. And mostly I was reading books, and I think that brought out more imagination. I think that there's less reading now. Okay, I'm sorry to attack a whole generation.
Yeah, it's like, come on, y'all, like, for real, this is ageism. Ageism at its finest.
But with the internet and apps and YouTube and all of these other visions and versions of people, you know, getting into your brain, how can people develop on imagination?
Okay, I have to like strongly disagree.
Trouble now.
Because I think our generation is actually very, very creative and really values creativity and making art. I think sometimes a lot of us are kind of going against, you know, just going into that 9-to-5 type of thing, and really value doing things like, I don't know, comedy on the side or making some music, because now it's become so easy to make some music and become associated with an app and then just start putting things up there for free. I think maybe the imaginative part that you mean is, yeah, like purely reading, I imagine that has gone down just because of TV shows and all that. But I think the imaginative part is definitely still there.
Okay, it really could be. But let me ask Mitch,
Okay.
which age level of audience do you find to be the most engaged? The most that's really craving, hearing a story.
For me, and again, I don't want to sound like I got a big head, but every audience I do, be it kids, middle-aged, seasoned, seasoned folks, senior citizens. I don't like to call them senior citizens, seasoned citizens. All of them, because I think my stories are hitting home to them, and I can't remember the last time I didn't get a standing ovation. I can't remember the last time I didn't get invited back. I did Lincoln's, Abraham Lincoln's home. I forgot where it was. I had to fly into this airport and then rent a car and drive like an hour and a half or 2 hours to get to where I had to go. And they've been doing this program for 99 years. Guy told me that was the first time anyone's ever got a standing ovation at this place. We're doing a program about Abraham Lincoln. And all I did was pull up all the stories that Dunbar had written, mentioned Lincoln, and all the stories that I had memorized that actually mentioned Abraham Lincoln. And anyway, it was fun. So all the audiences that I've been involved with have been engaging. I can't remember one that wasn't. There might be one or two people sitting in there that have attitude and don't want to participate, but eventually they end up doing it. I've gone to prisons. I've gone to juvenile detention centers where the kids are sitting there all hard, like, they don't want no part of this. Next thing you know, they're jumping up, pulling a yam with me. Everybody's raising their hand. They want to participate. Let me play this part. So, people warm up to you after a while. If you're honest, and I tell storytellers this, if you're honest, if you get up there, kids can figure out real quick whether you're lying or if you're fake. They can figure that out real quick. But if you're honest with them and you talk to them and you speak to them on a level and give them respect, I don't never call them boys and girls. Nah, they're young adults. I mean, I give them the respect right off the top. So they appreciate that. And then you have to speak their language. You have to listen to some music. I'll listen to some rap music or figure out who the top rap artist is. And if I throw their name out, I'm golden. He knows the baby? Oh, man. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm speaking their language. Now they're going to listen to everything I say. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
That's cool. But then I'm curious, actually. Do you have a story for us which you would mind performing? I think our viewers would love to hear something.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like some Dunbar, or would you like some of my stuff? What you want?
I want to see some of your stuff.
See some of my stuff?
Yeah.
All right. This is a poem I wrote the night President Barack Obama was elected president, because it was so euphoric. It was such a monumental occasion. I couldn't sleep. So I got up 3 o'clock in the morning and got a pencil and paper, and I sat down at the kitchen table. And this is what I wrote. And I called it The Election Slide, as opposed to the electric slide.
Electric slide.
All right, here we go. The ancestors are dancing with the living. Even those whose decision it was to drown in the Atlantic are ecstatically sliding electionally on the ocean's floor to a syncopathic Babatunde African drum beat, with a spattering of Ella scattering while Negro spirituals sing back up on drums as Roach, Monks on piano with his Thelonious approach, Miles is on horn with Dizzy and Satchmo, chanting hypnotically as Geronimo, while Mr. Bojangles and Little Sammy and even old Uncle Ben and I Ain't Your Mammy are smiling as they filing down the Soul Train line. This time is now, this time is here. Mud Deer and all those who feared the dogs and the hoses and the whips have a new dip in their hip and a new glide in their stride as they slide and move with the audacity of a hope group. Realize while singing the chorus, yes, we can, and yes, we did, as a new day dawns over pyramids with the prophecy fulfilled. We are the ones we have been waiting for.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Wow.
That was great. I love the musical stuff that you added to it. It was like a celebration, really.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously celebration. That was so well done.
And so unexpected too. So fresh. So fresh.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what wrote itself down that night, that morning. You know? Yeah. So it was a celebration. I just imagined everybody that was celebrating this great occasion. So, but but Dunbar, man, y'all got. Well, I gave you a little Dunbar earlier.
I would mind a little more Dunbar.
A little more Dunbar?
Yeah, please.
All right. So he wrote so many love stories. The Spelling Bee is a great one, but it's too long to tell right now. But another one that he wrote was is called The Old Apple Tree. There's a memory keeps running through my weary head tonight, and I see a picture dancing in the fire flame's ruddy light. It's a picture of an orchard, wrapped in autumn's purple haze with the tender light about it that I loved in other days. And standing in the corner, once again, I seem to see the verdant leaves and branches of an old apple tree. You perhaps would call it ugly, and I don't know that it's so if you look the tree all over, unadorned by memory's glow. Why its boughs are gnarled and crooked, and its leaves are getting thin, and the apples of its bearing wouldn't fill so large a bin as they used to. But I tell you, when it comes to pleasing me, it's the dearest in the orchard, is that old apple tree. I would hide within its shelter, settling in some cozy nook where no calls or threats could stir me from the pages of my book. Oh, that quiet, sweet seclusion. In its fullness passeth words. It was deeper than the deepest that my sanctum now affords. Why, the robins and the jaybirds, they was hand in glove with me as they winked at me and warbled in that old apple tree. It was on its sturdy branches that in summers long ago I would tie my swing and dangle in contentment to and fro, idly dreaming childish fancies, building castles in the air, making of myself a hero of romances rich and rare. I can shut my eyes and see it just as plain can be. That same old swing a dangle to that old apple tree. There's a rustic seat beneath it that I never shall forget. It's the place where me and Hallie, little sweetheart, used to sit when we wandered to the orchard so no listening ones could hear as I whispered sugar nonsense into her little willing ear. Now my gray old wife is Hallie, and I'm grayer still than she. But I'll never forget our coating beneath that old apple tree. Life for us ain't all been sunshine. And I guess we've had our share of its flitting joys and pleasures and a sprinkling of its care. Oft the skies have smiled upon us. Then again, we've watched them frown, but our load was never so heavy that we longed to lay it down. But when death does come a-calling, this my last request shall be, that they'll bury me and Hallie beneath that old apple tree.
Thank you. That was good.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Wow, there's so much of the emotion in the in your voice and how you you really crescendoed to that. I mean,
thank you. Yeah.
For sharing your time.
Yeah.
great imagery that he writes with his pen. Yes.
Well, I am so sorry to say, guys, but I have finished my espresso.
Oh.
Yeah, I even had a double this time, and
That's what I was gonna say. I thought you were working on getting a bigger cup.
Yeah.
I had to do that. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Mitch. I really appreciate your coming on the show and to and sharing your thoughts and ideas and your performances with us too. I mean, we feel very honored.
Robin. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marlene, Ben. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
Keep up the great work. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Maybe one day in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
We could really have some espresso and break some bread together.
Yeah, that's something.
That'd be great. Mitch Capel, Master Storyteller, and thank you, and Ashe.
Ashe.
Okay, and
Thank you for listening to this episode of Espresso Talk Today. I hope you enjoyed today's show. So, let's have an after coffee summary. We want to thank Gran'daddy Junebug for sharing his journey into storytelling and how he developed his focus on the works of the great Black poet, Paul Laurence Dunbar. His performances were inspirational and educational, and we were honored that he shared his skills and interests with us. This discussion showed how storytelling connected us with our roots in Africa, where the oral tradition was used to remember family history, acknowledge special events, and teach societal rules. Whether written or oral, storytelling is a culture-based and value-driven art form that entertains, educates, and uplifts children and adults alike. Storytellers like Gran'daddy Junebug help us to honor this tradition. Now, we always want to hear what you think. So, share your thoughts and questions with us by emailing us at team@expressotalktoday.com. You can also visit our website, expressotalktoday.com, for more information about our show and episodes. Join us on Facebook at the Espresso Talk Today Forum or on Twitter at Espresso Talk Today. We also have an Espresso Talk Today YouTube channel to watch short educational videos. You can listen to our episodes on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Next week, we will definitely have another interesting talk. So, be sure to bring your espresso. You might even want a double. See you next time. Ciao.